What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're taking a look at the free hit for Game Week 29. So I'm going to quickly talk about whether or not you should be using the chip this week, and then we'll take a look at the draft itself. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Now, over the last few weeks, we've had a lot of blank and double game weeks to contend with, lots of planning needed. So hopefully you're going into Game Week 29 already knowing whether you're going to use the free hit or not. But if you're still unsure, I would say there's probably 4 game weeks that you could look at using it in for the rest of the season. So the big double in 29, blank game week 32 where Chelsea, Man United, Brighton and Man City are all going to have no fixture. And then there should be smaller double game weeks in 34 and 37 to fit the rest of the fixtures that need to be rearranged. And there aren't that many to come, so they will be smaller double game weeks than in 29. They're not yet confirmed, but hopefully they will be soon. Now, for most squads, it's going to be more beneficial to either use it this week or in game week 32. And the thing to remember, it's not about the total points you get on the free hit in the week that you actually use it. It's about your total points overall. So is the free hit going to score more points, specifically in game week 29 or 32? It's definitely going to be game week 29 because there's lots of double game weeks. But it might be more beneficial to some of you to use it in 32. And that's what I'm going to try and show you now. This website is called FPL.team. You can access it. It's completely free. I would highly recommend going into this transfer planner, putting a free hit together for 29, and then seeing what your transfers look like for the rest of the season. Then compare that to a free hit in 32 and your transfers either side of that and see which one you prefer. And the button that I would recommend clicking is this one, Set Projected Fixtures from Planet FPL, because James from Planet FPL has basically gone in and predicted where the double game weeks will be, and that really helps with planning. Now I'm going to skip ahead to 32 quickly. Now this is the kind of free hit team that I will probably put together. Don't get too hung up on the exact players picked, because obviously if Tony is banned, I'm not going to pick him. I'll just go for someone else. But you're almost certainly going to want triple Arsenal and triple Liverpool, because they've got Southampton at home and Nottingham Forest at home. Now you might look at this and think, well, okay, Kane doesn't have a double, but his single game week fixtures are good. I'll keep him. Fair enough. Arsenal, again, no double game weeks, but their single game week fixtures are okay. I'll just keep them as well. And obviously you could use 1 or 2 transfers after 29 or even in 29 to get some Liverpool players in as well. So that's perfectly okay. So I'm just going to switch this to pretend it's a wild card. Let's say you've built to a team that looks a little bit like this for 32. When you go into game week 33, not a huge issue because there's no doubles anyway. But obviously Arsenal players have got Man City away, right? So you might not want 3 players for that fixture. As good as they've been, that is a difficult fixture for anyone. And when you go into game week 34, well, you've got your Liverpool players in place with a double, but you haven't got many Man City players that are going to probably double that week, Man United and Brighton. Now, in game week 32, if you weren't obviously wildcarding, if you were just building a team, you could bench 3 of those players from Man United, Man City and Brighton. But if you want to get close to 11 players, you can only bench 3 of them. There's a lot of good players in those teams. So that is the thing to think about. If you build towards 32, how easily can you get to a good double game week team afterwards? And is that better or worse than free hitting now? So if I just reset this a minute and we're just going to ignore game week 32, this is my team, for example. Now, obviously, I wildcarded recently, so my team is, of course, going to look fairly decent for 29. But if I went with my probable transfers this week. So let's just say I do Saka to Fernandes. And again, don't get too caught up on the fact that I'm selling Saka. We'll discuss that probably more next week. And I get Luke Shaw in. Let's just say I keep that team. Game week 30, I've got to get Haaland back, so I'm going to do that for Tony. And game week 31, look, let's just say I do a goalkeeper transfer, right? So we do Raya to Edison. So that's my rough plan. In game week 32, I would free hit. Again, not going to worry about the draft. I just want to know that I've only got 1 free transfer. Now, in game week 33, I've only kept 1 Arsenal player, but I actually don't mind that. I might have to take a bit of a hit on the points they score in 29 because they've got Leeds at home. But in game week 33, they've got Man City away. So I don't really care about having a triple up. And I'm going to have 3 of them in my free hit in 32 anyway. So when we get through to game week 34, which is where one of the double game weeks is probably going to be later on this season, I've already got a lot of players that are going to double, right? So we can get rid of all the players that don't double. I've got Edison on the bench as well. So there's only Kane, and obviously Odegaard on the bench and Trippier and Chilwell that aren't doubling. So what I would probably actually do is something like this: get rid of Kane to whoever. Let's just say Solanke. Let's see if this works. And then Odegaard would go all the way up to someone like Salah. And then the team would look something like this. Again, don't get too caught up on exactly what it looks like. And then when we go through to game week 37, all these teams, Man United, Man City and Brighton, they're probably going to double again, right? And if I keep hold of Chilwell and Kepa, they're also doubling that week too. So for me, as long as you're confident enough having a lot of Man United and Brighton players in 29 when they double, and then getting your Man City players and Liverpool players back in later, it makes more sense to free hit in 32 because you're going to carry those players for a lot of this season. And obviously injury, suspensions and European competitions might play a part, but ultimately Rashford and Fernandes, March, Matoma, McAllister, Dunk, Shaw, De Gea, all those players, they're absolutely nailed, right? So they're going to start most of the games for the rest of the season. So if they don't get injured, you're just carrying them the whole way through. So that's the thing to think about. It might make absolute sense for your team to free hit in 29 because you haven't got enough doublers and just start building towards a team for 32 and beyond with transfers. That might absolutely work, but you need to get into a transfer plan like this and work it out. I just think for me, 32 makes a lot of sense because I can ditch a few Arsenal players who don't have any doubles coming up. So again, like you look at Arsenal's fixtures, Leeds at home, great fixture, but this little span here, Liverpool away, West Ham away, Man City away, Chelsea at home, Arsenal are brilliant, but their points are likely to come down a little bit. FPL points this is compared to the fixtures they've had recently. So that's why I think it's okay to get rid of a few and then free hit them back in for game week 32. So as you can tell, I really like the free hit in game week 32. But again, I've planned for that. For you, it might not be that simple. So if you're using it in 29, let's talk about the draft. All right, let's take a look at the defensive options and the bench first of all. Now, this draft is based on my team value, so I've got 1.4 million left in the bank. Depending on what draft you put together, you may have more or less money in the bank. Obviously, everyone's got their own preferences. But once the first 11 is picked, I would just put as much money as I can on the bench. So I've gone for De Gea, Solanke, Estepinian and Reece James. Now, Brighton's double is one of the best, I would say, with Brentford at home and Bournemouth away. And because I've got Estepinian on the bench, that does mean that I don't have triple Brighton in my 11, and I'm not sure I'm happy about that, so I'll talk about that as I go. There's also no single game week players in this draft whatsoever. I don't care that Saka just scored 18 points and now he's got Leeds at home. He's not in this team. Likewise, whether or not Haaland is fit, and I know everyone's going to tell me he's going to score a hat-trick against Liverpool, he absolutely could. I don't care. He's not in this team. If I was free hitting this week, I would go for maximum upside, and that would be full of double game week players. Now, the defence was the hardest part to pick, and I actually think there's a case to be made to go 4-5-1. There's absolutely 5 midfielders that I would want to put into a free hit draft this week, but with the forwards, I picked one and was happy with him. Everyone else I'm just not quite sure about, and I would consider possibly going to a 4 at the back because I don't know who I'd want to leave out. Chelsea playing a wing-back system means I would want one of Chilwell or James at least in the side. I've gone for Chilwell just because of all those reasons I talked about for game week 28, where I just think he's proved his fitness a little bit more recently. Dunk, like I said, Brighton have got great fixtures. Estepinian's going to be travelling over the international break, so I just wonder whether Dunk is a little bit safer, even though he's not quite as exciting. Obviously, if you didn't want to take up a spot with a Brighton defender at all, you could go for Steele in goal, but I really like the look of West Ham's fixtures, Southampton at home and Newcastle at home, so that's why I've picked Areola. The one player that I'm not quite sure about is Trippier. Now, when I spoke about free hit for 28, I said the same thing. Because they had Nottingham Forest away, I wonder whether they might concede, and the upside might be going for different defenders and just backing against the crowd. Because most people that aren't free hitting this week, they're going to have Trippier. His ownership is going to be absolutely massive. When you look at the fixtures, one of them is a away game against West Ham. Now, don't get me wrong, the West Ham attack has not been great, but could they score one goal against Newcastle? Possibly. And you'd assume in the other fixture, even though it's at home, that Man United will score, right? So I don't know whether Trippier is going to get a clean sheet in either game. I guess there is a chance in both, but there's also a chance he doesn't get one whatsoever, and then you're relying on attacking returns. But once the clean sheet goes, the chances of bonus and a huge score are a lot less. So I wonder whether you could take a bit of a risk on free hit, drop Trippier, either put FH29 in and go for double Brighton defence, or just go for someone like Luke Shaw instead. And again, it's all about combinations, right? If you really want a Man United defensive player in there, but you don't want to drop any of the defenders, you could just put David De Gea in goal. But I guess without Casemiro, a lot of people might want to just take the chance of not having a Man United defender in the 11. So I think if I was picking a team this week, I'd probably want at least one Brighton defensive option, either in goal with Steele, Dunk or Estepinian if I wanted to take a risk on him starting both. I'd also want at least one Chelsea wing-back, and I really like the West Ham fixtures. So the only decision for me, if I was free hitting, is either to keep Trippier, which I know sounds crazy given how great he's been, and I probably wouldn't want to drop him, or going 4 at the back and adding someone like Luke Shaw in. But I don't think with the rest of the double game week players that there are, there's a huge amount of other options to pick. Like lesser defensive options, I just wouldn't go there. Same with Leeds and Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth, to be fair. And the only other ones are Liverpool, but it's Man City away and Chelsea away. It's an awful double for defenders. So it's really whether you just double up on West Ham or you stick a Man United defender in as well. So that's the 3 that I picked: Areola, Dunk, Trippier and Chilwell. I think you've got a bit of excitement in there with Chilwell and Trippier, maybe a little bit of safety with the fixtures with Dunk and Areola, but let me know in the comments below how different you would go. So for me, the midfield pretty much picked itself. The one spot that I'm probably least sure about is actually Salah, because as much as I rate him as an FPL option, obviously on paper that's a pretty horrible double game week, Man City away and Chelsea away. The logic behind putting him in the draft is, one, he's definitely going to start both of those games. He was already playing every single game for Liverpool anyway, but they're now not in any other competitions apart from the Premier League. So he's definitely going to start both. We assume he's still on penalties as well. And a lot of the fixtures between Liverpool and Man City under Guardiola and Klopp have been quite high scoring, right? And I think Liverpool are going to have no choice but just to go for it, because that midfield I don't think can compete. So I think we might see them line up with kind of 4 of Gakpo, Darwin, Jota, Salah and Firmino, and just go for it and bypass the midfield. And that could be good for the attackers, definitely not great for the defenders. So that's one thing. I'm hoping that will be a high-scoring game. And Chelsea, as much as I rate their defence, and I've got Chilwell in this draft, in my own team I've got Chilwell and Kepa, they have been conceding recently. In Liverpool attack, I still rate quite highly. So they can definitely go into both of those games and score. Are they going to go and get kind of 5, 6, 7, 8 goals across those 2 fixtures? Probably not. But could they get 2 to 4? Possibly. And if they're going to score, Salah is usually the main man. So that's why I've included him. You could definitely go for someone else in that position if you wanted to. For example, you could double up on Leicester midfield because their fixtures are really good. Crystal Palace away and Aston Villa at home. I know Crystal Palace have sacked Vieira and they've now gone for Hodgson, but last time Hodgson was in charge, that defence was not good. So I wouldn't suddenly worry about them being a super solid defence. I'm sure he'll make some improvements, but I still like those fixtures for Leicester. So you could go for a double up with Barnes. You could get rid of Estepinian on the bench and double up with Brighton midfielders, because to be honest, turning down Brentford at home and Bournemouth away is not something that I like, and I've already mentioned that before. But I think if you look at all the non-free hit teams this week, hardly any of them are going to have Mo Salah. So he's actually a bit of a differential, and that doesn't happen very often in double game weeks. But if you don't want to go for him, they are probably the players that I would look at. Either going for a second Brighton midfielder, I'd probably go for McAllister, because I think on penalties and playing as the number 10, as long as we think that's going to continue, he's probably a really great option to include. Or you go for Harvey Barnes instead. If you wanted to think outside the box a little bit more, you could go for someone like Jared Bowen or Ben Rama for West Ham for that Southampton at home and Newcastle at home. But for now, that is why I've picked Salah. And like I said, the fixtures for Leicester are really good, so I've gone for Maddison too. I think he just is the best FPL option in that Leicester team. I definitely wouldn't be looking at any of the defenders. With the Brighton midfielders, that is probably a spot I'm not sure about as well. But not that I don't want a Brighton midfielder, it's just which one to go for. Mitoma is travelling, I think, to Japan during the international break. McAllister is going away to play for Argentina. Solly March wasn't called up, so he's going to get a full rest. You could argue that for game week 29 specifically, he might be the best option, right? Because you know there's no issues with him playing either game. So we're not talking long term. For 29, you could put it March, then McAllister, and actually say that Matoma is the worst option if there's any doubts about him starting against Brentford. But I've said for a while now that he's my number one Brighton pick, so that's why I've put him in. If you wanted to play a bit safer, Solly March could be the one. Obviously, he's got great goal-scoring record recently, especially that one against Leeds. And then for me, I know Rashford is flagged at the moment. I'm pretty sure he's going to be absolutely fine by the time we get to game week 29. And obviously, Bruno Fernandes absolutely nailed and first-choice penalty taker as well. Casemiro's not there. Newcastle away is not easy, neither's Brentford at home, but I would absolutely back both of them in a double game week. So the three midfielders I would definitely choose: Fernandes, Rashford, Maddison. I think I would definitely have a Brighton midfielder as well. It's just which one do you prefer? Obviously, you can choose for your own team. And then it's what to do with that Salah spot. Do you go for Salah? Do you go for Barnes? Do you go for a second Brighton midfielder? That might be the way to go. And like I said, West Ham have got that good double, so you could look at Bowen. There's not a huge amount of other players I would look at. I guess for Leeds, you've got Arsenal away and Nottingham Forest at home, so the second game is pretty good. You could look at someone like Rodrigo. You could look at someone like Altawara. I probably pronounced that wrong, for Bournemouth. Maybe even Billing as well. But I think they are the main ones I'd look at. Salah, Barnes, Bowen, or a second Brighton midfielder instead. But for the rest of it, like I said, it kind of picks itself. And then up front, we've got Danny Ings and Kai Havertz. And I will talk about other forwards you could pick instead of either of them in just a minute. I think with Danny Ings in particular, that spot is up for grabs. But if I was free hitting this week, I think Havertz is one of the first forwards that I would put into my squad. He's playing really well right now. First choice penalty taker. His minutes look good. And importantly, Chelsea have got those two home fixtures against Villa and Liverpool. So we're not really thinking long term here. It's just for game week 29. And I think Havertz looks great. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not sure I'd put a huge amount of money on Chelsea winning both of those games. I'm not even sure I'd put much money on them winning either of them, but we don't really care about that for FPL. We only worry about goals scored when it comes to attackers. So is it realistic to expect 2 to 4 goals for Chelsea across those two games? I would say yes. And if they get that, Havertz is likely to be involved. Now, there is an argument that if you remove penalties from the equation, João Felix is actually a better option. Like, every time I watch him play for Chelsea, he's absolutely brilliant. But the penalty factor probably would swing it back to Havertz for me. So if I was only picking one, I would go for Havertz. But if you wanted to pick both of them, that's absolutely viable to do. Whether you're playing with 2 forwards or 3, you could pick both of Havertz or João Felix. If I was only going for one, I would go for Havertz. Now, for a free hit in general, I don't necessarily buy into the thinking that you've got to go completely different to those on free hit and those that aren't. But there are some spots where you could consider that. So if you think about teams that aren't free hitting, a lot are going to have at least one Brighton defensive option, goalkeeper or defender, at least one Brighton midfielder. Rashford and Trippier are going to be in a lot of teams. Most people are going to have both or one of Maddison and Fernandes. And then possibly Chilwell and James are in people's thinking, possibly Luke Shaw as well. So there are some spots where you can go a bit different. We've already talked about Salah. I've already talked about the goalkeeper spot as well. I think that second or third striker spot is also another opportunity. So for my team, for example, I've got Harry Kane, single game week, definitely wouldn't be in my free hit team. And I've also got Ollie Watkins. Now, I actually picked him last week ahead of Havertz, but that was more of a long-term thinking. I just preferred Watkins, especially with Bournemouth at home and Nottingham Forest at home, either side of the double. But if I'm only thinking about 29, and Watkins has got Leicester away and Chelsea away, can Villa go and get goals in both of those games? Of course they can, and Watkins could be involved. But if I was going to back something for a free hit and think a little bit different, I would back against those 2 away games and go for a player with better fixtures. So that's why Danny Ings has come into my thinking, because he started the last 3 games. And we know when that guy gets minutes, he often gets goals as well. And Southampton at home is a good fixture. And look, Newcastle at home has been difficult for most of this season, but defensively Newcastle just not quite there right now, and I don't think they're going to go and concede like 2, 3, 4, 5 goals. But could West Ham score in that game? I think again it's a possibility that could happen, and if Ings starts both of them, happy days. Now, because those games are going to be in quick succession, maybe he won't start both, we don't know. You could definitely look elsewhere. So one player I've already mentioned is just going for João Felix, dropping Reece James from the bench. I wouldn't go for Ivan Toney because he's only 1 yellow card away from a suspension. A lot of people that own him that aren't free hitting are going to keep him and hope that he doesn't get the yellow against Brighton the first game of the double. But if I was on a free hit, I just wouldn't take that risk. So if we're looking elsewhere, obviously one thing you could do is what I already mentioned earlier on in the video. You could go for 4 defenders, so just drop Ings completely, play Estepinian, play Luke Shaw, I don't know, play Reece James instead, whatever you want to do. That's one option. Otherwise, if we're looking at forwards with a double this week, there's probably not a huge amount of other players you go for. Isak is obviously one. So Newcastle have got Man United at home and West Ham away. And I'm only kind of laughing about that because a couple of weeks ago, people were, I was joking around that he was essential and now he's looked great. And his minutes look pretty good. Man United without Casemiro, West Ham away, not bad fixtures. So you could definitely go for Isak instead of Ings. I will say Ings is very much a punt because of the fixtures. But I think for 1 or 2 spots where you think like that, that's perfectly fine to do. The other double game which you've got Solanke, Brighton at home, Fulham at home. Fixture-wise, that's pretty good. But his goal threat has been pretty non-existent for most of this season. He did really well in the Championship last year. So at some point, those goals might come. But it's not looking massively likely. But he is nailed on. His minutes are great and he's on penalty. So you could consider him. I don't think I would go for someone like Bamford. Obviously, Liverpool forwards, you'd have to go for someone like Darwin Núñez. Not a bad option. But there's so many attackers that Klopp could go for. Is Darwin Núñez definitely going to get good minutes in both of those games? Not necessarily. And outside of that, it's really just Tony, Weghorst. They're just not players that I would consider. So unless I'm missing someone, I guess Iheanacho. You know, Palace away, Villa at home. I'd love that. But he literally didn't start the last game. And that would worry me going forward. So I just probably wouldn't take the risk. The other one I guess I've missed out is Evan Ferguson for Brighton. He might start both games. And instead of going for another defender or another midfielder, you could go for Evans instead of that Ings spot and just don't worry about the cash in the bank because it just doesn't matter. So I think I would definitely go for Havertz. The safe pick, I guess, for minutes and stuff like that is probably Watkins, but Isak's minutes look pretty good, and when Wilson's not on the pitch, he's also got penalties. Otherwise, I think you're taking a punt, and I kind of like the idea of going for Danny Ings because no one else is going to be owning him unless you're on a free hit or unless you're trying to manage the next few weeks without a wild card or a free hit or anything like that. So that's the team I've come up with. As always, that is not set in stone. By the time we get to the Gameweek 29 deadline, I might have a few different thoughts, but Fernandes, Rashford, Maddison, 1 Brighton midfielder, Havertz, 1 Brighton defender, Chilwell, 7 of those players are probably locked in. It just really depends what you want to do with the goalkeeper, Trippier, Ings and Salah. You could change those positions. Let me know in the comments below what you would do. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Catch you again soon.